My name's Steve Moruzzi. This video is for the common error codes for the FT series, both wall and floor boilers. In late 2016, on the back side of the covers, they added the common error codes. Our earlier models had a gray display. The error codes are all the same, and we're going to start with our error codes. Okay, so here we see an error code 80. Now, there are soft lockouts and hard lockouts. An example of that is error code 80 is low water cutoff. So if you haven't filled your boiler when you first received it with water and you plugged it in and powered it up, you will get an error code 80 until you purge all of the air out of the heat exchanger. So in this example, I disconnected and reconnected the low water cutoff. So there's an example of a soft lockout. Let's look at a hard lockout. Error code 20 is the condensate trap. So for a hard lockout, you physically have to power off the display. So I'm going to power off the display, power it right back on, and now we have reset the lockout. Okay, so we've shown an error code 80, which is a soft lockout, and error code 20, which is a hard lockout. If you want to go in and look at your error code history, power off the display, press and hold the mode button for about 5 seconds until you see the parameter 1 come up. Parameter 1 is your error code history. That's what EH stands for. I can press the scroll select button and get into my lockouts. So here's an example of a lockout 61, which was a soft lockout. Your first lockout is actually listed as 0. Your next lockout, as I turn clockwise, is now showing me error code 80, which we showed you previously as an example. And now I can scroll to my next error code. So now I have 3 error codes in here. It was a 61, 80, and 20. So if you have identified them and corrected them, and you want to clear that lockout history, press your scroll select button, go to your next parameter, which is parameter 2. And that is how you clear your error code history. I'm going to press the scroll select button, turn the function to on, press that scroll select button again. Now I can go back to parameter 1, which is my error code history, and when I press this, my error codes are clear. To get from the error code history back to normal operation, press your mode button until it powers off. Now power your screen back up and you're back to normal operation. So next we'll talk about error code 10 and 11. Error code 10 and 11 is really about air, fuel, and spark. It's ignition. But start by checking your vents. Also, on error code 11, there's a condensate trap in the boiler, and if the ball for the condensate trap is not free and it's stuck in the up position, the boiler will not light, and it will give you an error code 11. So error code 10 is actually flame has extinguished 8 times. So that means it lit, but flamed out. Maybe that's gas pressure, and we'll come back to that. Error code 11 is ignition failed 10 times, so it never lit, as shown here on the screen. So back to error code 10. Error code 10 lit, but it flamed out. So what is that? That could be fuel in air. As we modulate up, we're ramping that fan speed up. We need excess air and excess fuel. We need to check our incoming gas pressure. And right here on the screen, I'm showing you where we can do a gas pressure incoming reading. And here are the incoming gas pressures. So natural gas is 3.5 to 10.5. And that is the starting reference, by the way, which I'll come back to. And just below that, we're showing propane from 8 inches of water column to 13. So on the screen, we're showing an image of 6.8 inches of water column. The National Fuel Code basically tells you a 1/2 inch pressure drop. So we do not want to see greater than a 1 inch pressure drop. So that means if I have a starting reference, the boiler's not running, I have sitting idle, that static pressure of 6.8 inches. When the boiler lights and goes to full fire or full flame, we do not want to be below 5.8 inches of water column. So next for error code 1011, we're going to check spark or an ignition transformer. This is more for error code 11. Keep in mind error code 10 lit, but it flamed out 8 consecutive times. So with error code 11, we need to check the ignition transformer and the igniter. With power on to the boiler, but no call for heat, we're going to remove the 2 wires to the ignition transformer. Next, we'll insert the meter leads and give the boiler a call for heat or a demand. Now, what we're looking for is roughly 120 volts, but keep in mind, we haven't gone through the ignition sequence yet. You're going to have a short ignition period, so don't be fooled by a false reading. When you hear the gas valve energize and the boiler go into ignition, as of right now, here we're reading 118.5 volts. That's telling us the ignition transformer is being energized, but it's only energized at 3-second intervals. So it'll give you multiple tries for ignition. So again, just confirm, as we're showing here, that we have the 120 volts or close to 120 volts to the ignition transformer. We can go ahead and remove that igniter. On earlier models prior to 2021, the igniter was on the right-hand side. On later models, the igniter is on the back side. We do have a video showing how to remove the blower if needed, so you will have to go back in and watch that video. With power off to the boiler, remove those spark plug wires. There is no polarity to these spark plug wires, so while reinstalling them, no concern as to which one goes to which terminal. We're going to be removing these 4mm screws at the top of the igniter. And then reaching in for that igniter. Remember, tilt that igniter toward the center of the boiler because there is an angle to that igniter, and that gasket will come off with the igniter as well. Look at the quality of that gasket. If you need to replace it, please do so. We're going to take a look at any corrosion, any buildup of debris that may be on this igniter. Here on this one, you're seeing a little discoloration. What we would do at that point is take a non-abrasive cloth. A dollar bill works fine for this. And we're going to go ahead and clean that igniter. Clean the 2 electrodes for that igniter. Take a look at the gap of that igniter. It's 3 to 4 millimeters, which equates to 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch gap from electrode to electrode. When you're ready to reinstall that igniter, put the gasket back on the igniter. And again, while reassembling, start in on that angle and come all the way down. And then you can go ahead and put your screws back in and tighten carefully. That igniter does have a ceramic base to it, so please do not over tighten. Just make that snug. And of course, finally, replace your ignition spark plug wires. And again, as a reminder, there is no polarity to this, being that it is a DC voltage. So don't forget, air, fuel, spark can also be dirty burners, clogged filters, etc. So inspect your burner, okay? We will show a couple of images of how to get in and inspect your burner. Here you're seeing removal of the very large gasket. Removal of the burner plate is best done with a small screwdriver. You'll notice that there is a notch in the very front of that burner plate. Insertion of the screwdriver into that notch, and you can lift the burner plate out of position from the top of the boiler. Here you're seeing those PVC shavings that Steve mentioned earlier. So here are some that are not burnt off, and here are some that started to melt and burn off. And what happens is they will actually plug these orifice holes, and you won't get proper firing. And for those that aren't aware of how to pull the burners, please go back on our video links and watch how to remove the burner on the FT series, either wall or floor boilers. So air-fuel spark could also be plugged up orifices, as shown here. This was a winter spider web that plugged up a gas orifice just enough to interrupt the fuel input, and we couldn't light. Here's another image where somebody had dropped an Easter egg in the combustion air intake on the side of the home, and that plugged up the combustion air intake. And again, error code 10 and 11 is air fuel spark. On early models, so with the gray display, the 140 model actually had a screen on the outlet side of the blower, and that was located right here on the outlet side of the blower, just prior to the arm. So on 140 models with the gray display, make sure you take that apart and inspect to make sure that's not plugged. All the other versions, all the other models did not have that screen. It was only the 140 earlier models. Next we'll talk about is error code 16. Operating temperatures over 203 degrees Fahrenheit. And typically that's flow-related issues. So we want to start with testing the pump. First off, we want to make sure power is on to the boiler. Give yourself a call for heat. With a call for heat, we're going to measure 120 volts at the Molex plug. Here you can see we have roughly 118 volts. So we have power going to the pump. If you don't have 120 volts at this Molex connector, follow this connector. There is a short extension piece that also plugs in to another Molex connector going to the control board. So confirm that. It is in behind the cross member bar. So you can reach up inside and look for that connection. Make sure that connection is good and tight. If not, you may have to replace the control board. So here we're showing pump location of an FT199 for clarity. Once you've assured that you do have power to that pump, 120 volts, what we'd like you to do is power off the boiler, come back into that pump with a flat blade screwdriver, and remove the plug from the back of that pump. Inside of there, you're going to see that pump shaft. I'd like you to take a screwdriver to the flat of that pump shaft and turn that pump shaft to ensure that the pump is not bound. Now, that is a square slot, so again, you're really going to have to use a flathead screwdriver to try and get in there and just make sure it's loose or not bound, okay? If not, then you'll have to replace the pump itself. Here we're showing the pump location of the floor boiler. On the left-hand side jacket, there is a rubber grommet right here. And that rubber grommet, you can slide your flathead screwdriver in, remove the cap, and see if the pump is free. Error code 20 is condensate switch is open, so we've got a backed up condensate drain. And you need to check your vent on the condensate line as well, or condensate neutralizer for blockage, etc. On the wall hung and floor version, we give you a condensate hose that has a little vacuum breaker, and that should be used. For those, especially on the wall boiler, that want to use PVC for installation, keep in mind you need a vacuum breaker. So you should come out of that heater, 90 over, and then use a T-fitting, because that will hold back the condensate, which will cause the pressure switch to trip in giving us the condensate error code of 20. So here I'm showing the condensate trap that's in the wall boiler and also on the floor boiler on the 199. Now, this tube here comes up to our pressure switch, okay? This is the blocked condensate. So if I had a plug neutralizer kit or plugged up, what happens is at the bottom of the heat exchanger, we're going to build up pressure, which will trip this switch, giving us an error code 20. So for starters, at the very bottom of the wall hung, I can unthread this and clean that out. You'll need a 5-gallon pail. On the floor boiler, you can also take this off, drain that out, clean it, and don't forget we have a little ball in here. Make sure that ball is free. So you could literally take this right out of the cabinet and clean it. Also, on a clear condensate trap, you should always inspect your condensate trap. And here we're showing a condensate trap right in the boiler. If that is clean, that's telling me my heat exchanger is clean. If that's dirty, that water is coming from the heat exchanger. So we want to be able to get in. That's an indication that you would maybe have to clean your heat exchanger. And also, if you see a white slimy sludge, that is typically flue gas recirculation, otherwise known as cross-contamination. And that will build up in your neutralizer and your condensate traps. So this image here is an example of cross-contamination in the neutralizer. It's, like I said, a white slimy sludge that will also appear in your condensate trap. So you will need to clean both, and I would at that point open up my heat exchanger and clean my heat exchanger as well. So here I'm going to show an image or two of cross-contamination. And cross-contamination is your exhaust is being pulled into the combustion air intake. That can happen on any manufacturer's heaters. It may not only be the same appliance. You might have multiple appliances, maybe venting through a roof or sidewall, and when they're both running, that's when we're contaminating. So check your vent systems on, especially in residential equipment. A lot of times we'll see things, even dryer lint, which is not a cross-contamination, but we need to get in and see that vent system, make sure we've got a good separation from our exhaust to our combustion air, and make sure it's installed properly per the manual. Error code 40 is gas leak detected, and that's in the cabinet or close proximity. So on the control board, we actually have a gas sniffer or a gas leak detector. So if we do have a gas leak, we will go off an error code 40. Now keep in mind, you can have some off gases like adhesives or sealants. An example of that is if someone's doing hardwood floors with polyurethane, you're storing cans next to the boiler, or maybe it's in a closet in a condo complex and those polyurethanes are in the air. That could trigger the device to trip on error code 40. So be aware of that. Now, error code 40 typically is if someone's doing maybe a natural to propane conversion and they didn't tighten the fittings, or they dropped the gasket, or they've taken the burner out. When they put the burner back in, they didn't put the gasket back in properly. That could be error code 40. Error code 41 is fan speed too high with flame on. And what that is we get some type of blockage, typically on the combustion air intake. And we've ramped that fan up to overcome that. An example of that is the combustion air filter. If that combustion air filter is plugged or maybe has dryer lint or cottonwood, we're trying to overcome that by ramping that fan up. And don't forget, snowstorms or anything that's blocking the vent exterior. If you have that screen on the outside of the home on the combustion air intake and that gets plugged up with leaves, or a snowstorm, a blizzard, and that plugs up the vent, sidewall venting, for example, that will give us an error code 41. So check for proper installation or blockage on the combustion air vent. Error code 44. So error code 44 is listed as an air pressure sensor fault. Air pressure sensor fault is some type of blockage either on the exhaust vent or could even be on the combustion air intake. An example of the intake is check the screen, check for blockage on the screen's exterior of the home, check for proper installation. Could be anything from dryer lint to cottonwood or leaves or grass. So check for some kind of blockage, and don't forget, if there was a snowstorm within the past 24 hours and there was drifting snow, it may block vents, and that will give you an error code 44. So here we're showing a couple images for an error code 44. So again, don't forget the snow blocking your vent system. You want to make sure that's shoveled out. This example here, the complaint was the boiler runs fine during, warm weather, but when it's cold out, it would actually give us an error code 44. And what we found was it was vented improperly. And here's an example where the exhaust vent was below the combustion air intake. And flue gases, as they vapored up, in your flue gas or the exhaust gases, they have a high moisture content and highly corrosive. And that blocked the combustion air intake screen and froze up. So that's what can happen with improper venting. And that gave it an error code 44. Your exhaust should always be above your combustion air intakes. Error code 66 is the mixing valve. This is only on the wall hung version. That could be the 140 model or 199. Error code 72, flames detected prior to ignition. Reality is flame is detected after ignition. You could sometimes get glowing at the end of a run cycle if your burners are dirty. And we use an optical flame sensor, and it's looking in a sight window. And if that sees any glowing after the run cycle, it will give you the error code 72. So if that is the case, take your burner out and inspect your burner and clean the burner. And for those that aren't aware of how to pull the burners, please go back on our video links and watch how to remove the burner on the FT series, either wall or floor boilers. Error code 80 is water level detected 4 consecutive times. That is our low water cutoff device that's built into the boiler. That's an auto reset. So if you haven't filled the boiler, make sure you fill the boiler with water and purge the air. If you are working on a Combi wall hung, that Combi wall hung, you will need to give the boiler a TT demand so the diverter valve goes to the proper position so you can bleed that heat exchanger properly. That's the easiest way, and we do have a video on that on Laars.com. So error code 42 is the additional low water cutoff terminals. So right here on the boiler, we're showing additional low water cutoff terminals. And that could be for anything out in the system. Example of that, if you had to put an additional low water cutoff or manual high limit or anything out in the piping, fan in the can, air proven switch. So anything external of the cabinet you could wire in to these two terminals, which would give you the other low water cutoff. So we have the built-in low water cutoff, which is on auto reset, and the additional low water cutoff terminals. Now, leaving the factory, there'll actually be a jumper right here on these two low water cutoff terminals. And so all I did to trigger this was I disconnected it. I'm going to reconnect that jumper. And as you can see, the error code went away, which is telling us it's a soft lockout, not a hard lockout. Now, lastly, I want to talk about is not an error code. If we're in warm weather shutdown, you will see that sun icon telling you that you're in warm weather shutdown. An example of that is we're set at 70 degrees here in the training room, and it's about 73 degrees. So it will not allow our heat to come on. So don't forget that if you are in warm weather shutdown, you will not be able to fire your boiler. You will have to go back into the programming. You can watch those videos and increase that temperature to get your boiler to test fire for you. If you have any technical questions, please contact the factory at 1-800-900-9276. Thank you.